the council declared a climate emergency back in 2019, and also has had a real focus on how we improve the air quality in the city, which has been ongoing since at least probably 2015. And on both those areas, we've managed to establish really good, positive working relationships with various parts of the university. And worked on really specific things, but also, I would say, the bigger picture. So the Climate Commission, which was set up by Professor Andy Goulson, has really helped us to kind of start collaboration across the city in terms of the third sector, private sector and public sector. And it's given us a bit of an independent voice in the city and help to reach out maybe beyond where we'd normally be able to reach, and to have kind of that insight and evidence-based research. So that's been really, really valuable. And then we've had the kind of other side where we've had really, really focused questions that we've looked at with the university. So anything from how do we invest our capital programme on housing to get the best from our housing stock, from a carbon point of view. So where do we prioritise? Where will we drive down emissions quickly enough? And that's resulted in a tool being developed that we can now use every time we make an investment decision. To the work that we've done with Cat in terms of looking at our tree planting strategy, and then the work with James in terms of the work on air quality. So there's been a real kind of variety of work that's happened, and all of it has been really important. And the key thing for us has been that we've had a really strong evidence base.
So the Leeds for Trees partnership is a collaboration between the council and the university and a charity called the United Bank of Carbon. And we've been working together for about 10 years or so to try and understand, firstly, what the kind of, I guess, the natural capital resource of trees and green spaces in Leeds actually is at the moment, and then how we can expand or improve that in order to kind of enhance those benefits for people. So one of the things that we did was to make an assessment of the canopy coverage across the city, so that we could start to look at not only what is it at a city scale, but where are the hotspots where there's less tree canopy coverage. And that's important because we know that there are so many benefits provided by having access to trees and green spaces, not just for the climate and biodiversity, but also for people's health and well-being. So when we find those areas where there's much less canopy cover, that enables us to think about how we can look to increase that. And then at a broader scale, we've been thinking about how, with the council's aspirations to get to net zero and reduce emissions, we've been looking at the extent to which planting new woodlands and trees can help to take up some of the remaining carbon dioxide. So getting to net zero is all about reducing emissions as much as possible, but it's also about enhancing the mechanisms that we have to remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So one of the things we've been looking at in recent years is how much woodland does a city need to create in order to make a substantial contribution to getting to net zero. And this has played an important role in informing the council's aspirations, which are at the moment to try and double the canopy cover across the city.
We now know the tree canopy cover at a ward level. So when we are making kind of prioritisation decisions about where we focus tree planting, we can look where that canopy covers the lowest. And like Kat says, there's so many benefits linked to kind of mental health and well-being. You know, there's sort of a drive to drive down health inequalities in the city, and that is actually a factor, that access to green space and access to trees. So that's one example. The other one is that kind of tree replacement policy and starting to amend that. So we've always traditionally had if a tree's cut down, you replace it with three. And we're just working through the detail of that now to actually come up with something that's more representative of the true value of that tree. So again, that helps because unfortunately trees do have to be cut down due to disease, or even due to sometimes to just damage to property or things. So but at least then we know that we are replacing it with an equivalent. So that's just a couple of really good practical examples.
We've been building on the work we've done with Leeds to work with local authorities across Yorkshire to look at their own woodland creation and tree planting aspirations. And actually Leeds has been one of the real driving forces behind that White Rose Forest partnership. And So we're taking what we've learned from this collaboration with Leeds, and that's enabling us to support other local authorities at a wider scale as well.
Yeah, so I've been collaborating with the council on the theme of air quality and kind of transport for over a decade now. The project on hybrid taxis, which obviously has benefits, or huge benefits for air quality, but also in terms of kind of climate change emissions, and also trying to really communicate through to the members of the council that it basically would save taxi drivers lots of money as well. So communicating that business case and evidence, that really came about from just like one nugget of information. So I've been working with Transport for London in terms of them kind of shaping their ultra low emission zone policy, and they'd done lots of testing of different cars. And I was just staggered to see how clean hybrid petrol cars were in terms of air quality emissions, so emissions of oxides of nitrogen, nitrogen dioxide, which are harmful to health. I mocked up this very simple graphic, which was you could have 1,000 hybrid petrol taxis, and you could have one older diesel taxi commonly used, and they would be emitting the same levels of air pollution. And I communicated that to members' meetings and some of these professional bodies, and I think that single bit of it really struck home, and everyone bought into that.
Well, one thing I'd just say, I suppose, in terms of what James has said about that message, that 1 to 1,000, which was really fundamental. But when you think about the clean air zone policy, the national policy for taxi and private hire was Euro 6 diesel. So actually Leeds went absolutely out on a limb with that because of the work that James had done and because of the business case and financial side that he'd done. I felt confident to be able to stand and defend that position, and truly believe it was the right decision. And, you know, when I walk around Leeds now, you know, pretty much every taxi, probably about 50-60% of our taxi fleet are now petrol hybrid because of that one decision. But it wasn't an easy decision to take, and there was a lot of pushback from government. Were probably more accepting than you'd imagine, considering it wasn't their policy. That, you know, they were pretty supportive, but you know, that's a really difficult thing to do something completely different from what's set down in a national framework. And without the university and without James's research, there's absolutely no way we would have done that. Leeds has got compliant air quality now, and we haven't implemented the clean air zone. However, we have got the transition of the fleet that we would have got if we had implemented the clean air zone. So through the support and the packages we gave to the taxi fleet and the HGV drivers, we've seen that improvement. And I think the relationship for me is the most critical thing, just being able to pick up the phone to James or Kat and say, actually, I'm not quite sure where to go with this. I've got a bit of a chat. Is there anything you can point me at?
Building up kind of trusted relationships with the same people over time is really key, so that the council know that they can ask us for things, and that we know who to talk to in the council about certain things.
We had a member of my team for a couple of years who actually was on part-time secondment with the university, and so what that meant was he had a really in-depth understanding of how the university worked and could obviously make those links more easily in both directions. So I think that was really helpful, especially in that kind of early time of establishing those links and networks. So that, for me, that's probably been the key thing, and he was obviously focused on the low carbon air quality side particularly.
The work on hybrid taxis, that really grew up. Well, two projects emerged. We had one kind of small seed corn funded project from what was called a DEFRA air quality grant scheme that we applied jointly with, well, the council applied on our behalf, but we worked closely on that. But I think a big benefit of collaborating, obviously, with the university is also we have this big network of kind of very, you know, bright young things called students, and we had some great postgraduate, so PhD students. They were working through the Low Carbon Technologies Doctoral Training Centre. which brought real lot of like exciting resource, like cutting edge instruments, technical staff to support doing really kind of internationally leading research.
So a lot of the work that we've done with the council has come from some initial work called iTree Leeds, which was all about making some really detailed measurements of trees on the University of Leeds campus and other places in Leeds. A big part of the work that we've done so far has been involving lots of volunteers, so students, staff at the university and members of the public. But also a key thing, I think, has been trying to integrate slightly longer student projects. In terms of collaborative working, timescales are always really tricky, and knowing what can be achieved in a certain time frame, but also knowing what your partner needs and by when is really important to make sure that everybody's going to come away with the things that they need on the timescale that they need them. So sometimes it's just about being clear about what you can achieve and not over-promising.
Managing expectations up front, I think, is a very good tip, and just that honesty about what is achievable, and also being prepared to challenge back. So I don't think anybody who's making policy wants somebody to just agree with them.
Top tips to be responsive and support each other as you possibly can. So, for example, I've got a major, project reviewing and assessing the impact of local air quality plans across the country, including, the work that Leeds City Council are doing, and that grows from all of these small things that you do and developing relationships and understanding how kind of councils work and their pressing needs.